All right, well, hello everyone. Today we are talking about what it looks like to exit a business and whether that is exiting for sale or exiting the day-to-day. So, I think a lot of people talk about, oh, I need to sell the business. That's what they think about exiting, but it's more than that. So you want to talk about that for just a bit?
Well, the main thing you want to do is before you can exit the business, really, there's like a pre-exit. That pre-exit is get out of the roles of the day-to-day. So that's sales, marketing, the logistical, filling all those roles, and then exiting that day-to-day so it can grow whether you're there or not.
Yeah, and it's a slow transition, right? Like first you get rid of one thing, then you get rid of something else. And as a CEO, if your role is not growing and your role is not constantly changing, then you're going to get stagnant. And so we always need to be exiting whatever role we're in now. We then hand it off to someone else. Then we get a new role, then we hand it off. New role, hand it off.
Yeah, you should be taking on more as you go. It creates a vacuum underneath you for the next role of the next person below you to go and come below you.
And why do you think the CEO really is the bottleneck to the business? Like when we look at them and we go, this guy's the bottleneck to the business.
We know that businesses don't have problems, right? They have people and people have problems. So all of our businesses are always the reflection of whatever our weaknesses are. So whatever those are, as us as the CEO or anybody that's in a CEO role, they're control. They want to have control, or they don't have clarity, or whatever. It's all going to be reflected into the business.
All right, let's talk about the difference between growth and scale. So if someone asks you to that, how would you respond? Because they are different. Growing and scaling are different.
I think scaling a lot of times is in the systems, right? You set up a system and that can stack one on top of the other. Growth then is like a revenue, like is more revenue coming in, is more business coming in, and things like that.
Well, I also think like if you think about growing in the very beginning of the business, it's like you have to grow, right? So you're growing, but scale is different. And the biggest thing is, no one talks about the capacity of the CEO. Like you can only take on so much stuff, right? So in the very beginning, if your plate is completely clean, which we need to speak about that for just a second, because sometimes you just need to completely clear your plate. You want to talk about that for a minute?
The guy told me to clean my plate?
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, before we came down to Florida, I had gotten to a place where God told me to clear my plate. And so it was about a year before we moved down here, I was being told to clear my plate and started moving off and simplifying all the things. Your word for the year was simplify. And so we just kind of started cleaning our plate to move in and add a capacity for more things. And, it ties in. I had a coaching call yesterday and we were looking at it and it was like, where do I start, right? Like, because the CEO had the capacity. They're like doing sales, running the marketing, managing the accounting. I said, in order to clear your plate, you have to have the right accounting person in place. You need to have the right marketing person in place. You need to be able to manage the lead systems that are in place or whatever operation that is. You can't start adding it. And one of the things I look at when I say that is like, I hand you an 8-pound bowling ball. And it's like, all right, that's no big deal. I can handle that. When I start handing you a second ball and a third ball, that's where things get heavy. And then by being able to clear your plate is to get rid of some of those, hand that ball to somebody else.
Yeah. So one of the tricks that we tell people what to do is we have a little game that we play with Post-it notes. And we just meet with the CEO and we go, okay, let's write down all the things that you're currently doing right now. And it's hysterical how the conversation looks, because it's like we've got, 50 Post-it notes and then we say, let's get rid of this.
The CEOs usually find a value. You can start to see them puffing up of like, I do this, and this, and like the flex is like how much they do, right? And instead it's like there's 3 key things they probably need to do at that point in time. And the cool thing about this game is it doesn't matter what business you're running. If you're the CEO running any company, you should have a list of Post-it notes that you're doing, right? And so you're going through that. And it's just going to be different as you grow and go along. From one point you're in sales, so now you're out of sales, or you're doing marketing and now you're out of marketing. And so you start removing Post-it notes.
Yeah, so if you're in a business that actually has a product, obviously you've got to make the stuff, you've got to sell the stuff, and then you have to fulfill the stuff. If you're in a service-based business, you have to service the stuff.
Yeah.
You still have to first sell it, then you have to service this,
So-
and then, you
So
know.
what that means is like, so if you're in Annie's pie shop and you're making the pies, right? Like, so you're making the product. If you're in Johnny's air conditioning system, you're going out and fixing the air conditioning system. And so moving out of those roles, if those aren't your post-it, there's so many parts of your other post-it that usually don't get gotten to.
Yeah, and so let's just do the Annie's pie shop. But like first you're making it, you're selling it, you're fulfilling it, you're the whole thing. That's the whole thing. And in the beginning you do all three, and then slowly you start giving away the things that you kind of suck at or the things that you don't like.
Right.
And almost always you're hanging on to one of those things, and it's the job that you don't want to give up because you're actually pretty good at it.
Well, and it can be a thing where you can like it because maybe
And you like it,
Maybe
yeah.
Annie likes making pies, right? Now she gives up the cashier, the person going to the store to buy the products, and somebody that mops the floor, right? So she gets rid of those things. But now technically she has to make the pies to work, to sell it, to pay those people. And then they get inverted. And people hate being in that position where if she stops making pies, the whole thing breaks. And I go, that is usually what we try and fix inside of the business.
Yeah, and so what we say is a lot of times we see CEOs and they're still doing all three. So then we let's just say there's 5 main functions actually, really. And so we start with going, a lot of times we see they've given away 2. So now we get them down to 3, then we get down to 1. And then that's where it gets the hardest. So like, for example, for me, it's marketing. I love marketing. So with every company, I'm still dabbling in that marketing role. He's really good at sales. So he's constantly dabbling in the sales. And so we even, with ourselves, with our companies, we have to watch it because we're constantly like, oh, let me dabble in that. And it's like, no, let me hire the right person. Let me coach that person. And then again, exit out of that role, which is really important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I want to talk about, at one point we had 2 companies that were on the Inc. 5000 list at the same time.
At the same time.
Which is very rare. But I want to talk about kind of the constraint of getting leads and then servicing those leads, and how a lot of times people get frustrated, but that's just the theory of growth with business.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that for a second?
The theory of being frustrated with growth?
Well, no, it's cut.
Sorry, I don't know what you were asking me.
We're talking about how like first you get leads and then you solve for the problem of not being able to service the leads, and then you service the leads, and then now you've got a bunch of people to service the leads, and now you don't have enough time to do the other.
Okay.
Cut. We're gonna get a new one. You ready? So now let's talk about just the whole frustration that I see CEOs have of the getting leads, servicing those leads, and that we need to normalize that that's the period of growth. But I feel like a lot of people get frustrated because they're like, I don't have enough leads. Now I have too many leads. I can't service it. And just normalizing that that's the whole system of growth in a business.
A game whack-a-mole. You just gotta hit it. One pops up, you go swing at it, it drops down, you go hit the other one, and you know, and for me, my brain always runs on the P&L. So which means even when you're saying that, I'm like, okay, we spend 5,000 on leads, and now leads come in, now we've got to drive those to sales, and the sales cycle takes 45 days instead of 30 days, so you can't even see the money coming in. So now you're in month 2, spending 5,000 more dollars on marketing. So you go, wait a minute, I'm gonna pull back until I sell. Oh wait, now we sold, so now we've got some, now we turn it back on. And so they do this tug of war of essentially doing sales and doing marketing and doing sales and doing marketing, and then the salespeople aren't selling fast enough, so they jump into sales, and so now they've cut back the money, they're going to go do the sales, and now we just did everything for nothing.
Yeah, so if you think about a business that just starts up, right, the constraint that you have day one is you have no leads, right? So now you have to solve for that constraint, and now you've got a bunch of leads. Now the constraint is you've got a bunch of leads, but those leads aren't converting. So that's the next, then you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're getting all these leads. They're not answering the phone. They're not responding. So now you figure out the sales process. Now you go, okay, now we figured out how to get them to respond. So now you get a bunch of leads. Now what's the problem? Now you can't fulfill all the customers that you're getting because you fixed that problem.
Can't make enough pies.
So now it's like, oh my gosh, now we need to optimize and improve our process. And then what happens again? Now we got all these people to fulfill. now we need more leads again. So we kind of have some formulas that can help with that, so that yes, it's always going to be that way. But instead of being
It
this,
should be, and it keeps going up.
yeah, but instead of it being like this and down and this and down and having that, we've kind of created some systems and processes to make it a little bit easier, so it's not so much. Let's talk about the optimizing the bottlenecks that are occurring in business at any given time. So what would you see is some of the biggest bottlenecks that you see with companies right now?
Well, the one I usually see is that the box they're working in their mind of a business is only this size. And if they thought of it as a bigger size of, like, instead of one box, 100 of those boxes, the way they built the systems and the operations would change drastically when they saw how much bigger. And then at the same time, you can look at that as one customer inside of that box can be replicated 100 times too. So those are usually the two ways in which I see the bottleneck.
So one of the most magical things that we've come up with is a CEO Scorecard, and you started it, you created it, I made it better. So I want you to kind of explain the CEO Scale Scorecard and how it works, and then I'll expand on it.
It's funny. I think of this because I bring this up in the coaching calls, and usually I pull up the screen and kind of share, because we say this and they don't understand what we're talking about. When you get on a coaching call, and I just see the light bulb go off, and like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I know exactly what to do. So when you go through it, you start looking at it and say, this product, this result, this metric is in red. And so it could be for a person, it could be for a department in your business, it could be for a business, right? So there's different levels to how you can use it. But when it's in red, it means it's not performing at that right level. If you're running at orange, then it's saying it's warming up, but it's just not there yet. Maybe it's on track, but you're looking this over a scale of a month. And so, you could be 2 weeks into the month and it's halfway to the goal. Well, that's good. If you're 2 weeks into the month, and it's a third of the way to the goal, now it's red because you're behind. And so now you need to go work on that.
Yeah, so if you think about your business as an assembly line, like just think about an assembly line where one person gets the chocolate. I love that one with Lucille Ball, where they have the chocolates on the assembly line and it's going too fast and she can't get it. I love that episode. But that's kind of how business is, and it's easy to see when you look at an assembly line. But that's what we kind of try to do with this scorecard, is basically put everyone in an assembly line lane. Mm-hmm. And so if you're identifying the key pieces of the user journey, the customer journey, and you go, okay, what's the goal for each one of these departments? And then you put everything into red, yellow, green. Like red would be like, this is not working. We're spending money on leads in marketing and the leads are not converting. We're spending $100 per customer and only making 80 or
right.
however
and I want to spell that out a little clearer. So you're running leads, you have leads coming in, 100 of them come in, and you spent X amount of money. That could be a green department. That department is green, but the conversion of them from lead to execution is red, because it's 1 out of 100, and you're going with 3, 5 or whatever it is. And so that's what you're talking about, is like you can have one department green and one department red, and getting all of them in that kinetic chain and that assembly line is really key.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. One was we talked to a guy that said, I can't get my cost per click down any lower. And so let's just say he was paying $25 a click for whatever it was, but the product he was selling was only $50. Well, that math is just not gonna math. And so it's like what he had to do was he just kept spending time trying to get that cost per click down, getting it down. Finally, we had to say to him, you've done everything. We can't get this cost per click down any lower. Now you just have to go, okay, the cost per click is $25. We now have to raise your price so that it can be profitable. So sometimes I think people have blocks like that where they just can't see.
They're afraid because every decision you go through, you have a decision to disrupt your system. It's like, oh, well, if I sell it too high, then nobody will buy it. And potentially, but the alternative is to keep paying too high of a click and then losing money. So what else are you going to do? So that's right. That's the challenge everybody's facing.
And everything on the metrics, your goal as a CEO is to look at this CEO scale scorecard and go, okay, I want the red metrics to turn to yellow, the yellow to turn to green. And that's really how simple it is if you've got it all laid out with all the different departments. And then the part that's so important that I can't stress enough is you have to have one person responsible
for each KPI.
For every single item on that list. And if multiple people are responsible, then no one's responsible.
Well, they're multiple responsible, but multiple responsible for one target. What you mean is one person responsible for one target. You can have multiple people, everybody has their own target. Then you're the CEO making sure they're optimally performing, which is weekly calls or weekly meetings and going over strategy and coaching them along so that they can find success.
And I will say, I hate when I see companies where they're like, oh, we're going to make a 5-year goal, we're going to make a 10-year goal. In my opinion, 3 years is the maximum goal you should make. And everything we do is based on weekly and monthly goals. And then
it's too far out. Yeah, once they get too far
once you
out,
start getting like 5-year, 10-year goals,
the world's going to be different.
And you don't know what's going to happen.
So it's tough. So.
Yeah, focus on weekly, monthly, and 90-day goals.
Even with all the AI stuff coming along, people are going to produce things at a much faster rate.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about
how beautiful you are.
We want to talk about, it's called the Grow, Scale, and Exit Operating System. And
it's very distracting doing a video with you. Do you know that?
We have created, thank you. We've created a Grow, Scale, and Exit. It's a weekly system for building a business that runs without you. And so I want to first talk about the offer.
Is that system expensive? Is it expensive? It sounds expensive.
Focus.
Can anybody have that?
We want to talk about your offer and your positioning, right? So there's a few core pieces that are so important in the offer that I cannot stress enough. And number one is your target audience. Like, who exactly are we targeting?
The avatar. You may have heard this before, but the avatar is equal to your target audience. Who is the person that is your customer that's going to follow what it is you're looking for?
And it's so funny. We just went into a luncheon yesterday, and it was literally all these CEOs, like really high-end CEOs. And all of a sudden, the guy had just exited a business who was sitting next to us. And I said, well, what's next for you? And he's like, I found a painful problem that someone has in our HOA. Mm-hmm. And he's now developing a company all around it. And that's the whole thing. It's like, okay, who exactly are you serving? And what's the painful problem that you have?
He already had, and that it was like, oh, and a lot of times that's how things are innovative, because you're like, I have a problem. If I have a problem, more people than me have this problem. So now you've got to do that, but now you've got to get the offer right for whatever that offer is and merge that together.
Yeah, and then you have a primary offer. So it's like, what do we sell that solves that problem? And then you have your USP, which is your unique selling proposition, which is like, why us versus everyone else? Mm-hmm. And then the final step is that guarantee. Like, what removes risk to get people to go, here's why I'm willing to use you.
I think it's so crazy because when we say this, I started even thinking about like that guy's business because you framed it with that. But then I started looking at it like, okay, so this is Annie's pie shop. She's got to do that, and they come with a guarantee. So I think people can somewhat get lost in this part of the business, but that's a great framework that they can start working through. If you get stuck, DM us, message us. We'll help you work through that framework as that applies to your business.
Yeah, and so every single business, if you want to grow, right, it's called Grow, Scale, and Exit. If you want to grow, the very first thing that you have to do in any business is what?
Generate a lead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So first you got to generate the lead, then you've got to nurture that lead, then you've got to convert it, and then you've got to sell it, and then hopefully upsell and get some different things. In my book, How to Sell Your Business for Millions, I really focus on how to do recurring revenue, which is what changes the business model completely.
So they get the book, they get this. Isn't there a bonus offer to this book?
Yeah, so if you buy this book on Amazon right now, we're going to give you a free copy of our CEO Scale Scorecard. And you can literally download it. It's in Excel format. And then you just change it with whatever names we have, with all the numbers that we have, and put it for your business. And those weekly metrics to me are non-negotiable. You've got to track every single week how many leads were generated, how many appointments were set, how many appointments were held, how many deals were closed, what was the cost per lead, and what was our conversion rate.
Yeah, well, and I think the part of it is they get this book, they get that CEO scorecard. Our conversations are different. You know what I mean? Once they have that, they have a framework around what we're talking about. They have all the back end. It really just speeds things up once they have those to growing and doing it. Otherwise, they're watching the free content. They can do that obviously, but picking up the book, getting the scorecard, and then getting on the phone with us is going to massively grow. And that, like you mentioned, those things that we're going to focus on, which again they can do, but sometimes the outside viewpoint of what can they upsell, or it's the cost per lead, or it's driving in more leads, or it's conversion. What can I say or do to convert leads? There's all these problems, which is fine because every business has them, but how we can help solve that problem.
And then the final step is scale. Well, and actually, first it's scale. So you want to systematize everything, and we remove chaos, right? So everything that works becomes a system, right? The sales process, the marketing process, the onboarding process, the service delivery, everything. And I always say if it's done more than twice, it becomes a process, right? So that's what makes the business transferable and sellable later. And then finally, we have the method of exiting. And like we said, first we help the CEO. Yeah, first we help the CEO. You exit out of the business, and then once we do that, we then get it to where we can help.
And this is the crux of what I was saying when I taught the money game coaching, because it's like now you have a cash flowing business making you $20,000 a month, or it's worth $1 million. Which do you want? Do you want a $20,000 business that you touch 4 hours a week, or do you want $1 million in your bank account, right? And can you get it from $1 million to $2 million? Can you get it from 20,000, or by getting it from 20,000 to 40,000?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you want to focus on and just kind of ask yourself, like, is this business so dependent on me? Could someone else run this? Are we increasing our valuation?
But you don't understand, Chantel. If I had $1 for every time someone said that to me, and then they said Chantel too, and they're like, you don't understand. No, I'm like, I'm Ryan.
Well, we would love to help you and really get this to the next level.
5,000 too at the same time.
Yeah. So we love to help you grow, scale, and exit your business. If what we've said today resonates with you, then book your free 15-minute call, and we'd love to kind of help take your business to the next level. And if you've ever thought about selling your business, we can help give you a mini free evaluation on what your business is worth today. And then we also have kind of a more detailed one as well. So hopefully you found this valuable. We loved spending time with you today.
Oh boy.
And you guys stay tuned. We'll be having another episode soon.